In 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered outside of her Los Angeles home. Her ex-husband, O.J. Simpson, was tried but not convicted for the crime. With me today is Denise Brown, Nicole's sister. Denise has spent the last decade helping to end violence against women. Denise, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I know that you're in town to talk to give a speech at Interval House, and this is something that you do quite a lot of, trying to create awareness. In the past 12 years since Nicole's death, tell me about the triumphs and the challenges of this cause. What's working and what isn't?
Well, you know what? I mean, there's a lot of good things that happened. There really are. I mean, if you want to take granted, I would love to have my sister back and not have to do any of this and not even have to, educate myself about domestic violence. But the reality is I'm here, I'm speaking, and it was a learning experience for me. Learning about the whys.
And what are the whys?
Well, those are the whys that I asked. Why do they stay? Why don't they leave? Why? And I had those exact same whys because after we found Nicole's notes and diaries, my dad found them, and he said, Denise, he goes, come here and take a look at this. And I started reading, and I threw them down because I said, no way.
Can you share with us a bit about that, just for our viewers who...
Well, yeah, I mean, there were things in there, like vacations that we had took. We went to Hawaii, and all of a sudden it was Nicole, having a great time, everything was fine. All of a sudden they had an argument, and behind closed doors, she was hanging over the balcony off of a 12-story building. And things like that, being in a wine cellar, being locked in a wine cellar, being beat up in the wine cellar when he went back and watched TV and, and spent a whole day there. And, things like that where you're privy to you're there, but you don't know what happens behind closed doors. And those are the why questions.
So that obviously implies this silence. I'm sure you and your sister were close, but she didn't tell you, or women tend not to tell?
They
don't. Okay.
And typically they don't until it gets really dangerous, and then that's when they come forward. But there's 3 things that I've learned from women as I've traveled, and one is hope, shame, and fear. The hope that things are going to get better, the shame of not wanting anyone to know, not your best friend, not a family member, and then the fear of not knowing where to go, what to do, and that's difficult. Especially if they have children. That's the hardest part. And so that is one thing that they do have in common. But I mean, for myself, and going to a shelter with Nicole's diaries, my mom and I, we went to a shelter, and I said, well, what's this all about? And they started educating me. They gave me fact sheets, they gave me books to read, things like that. And then my real education actually happened when I started traveling. Because then I went to all the shelters. Every time I would go someplace, I'd go visit the shelters. I talked to the women in the shelters.
Now, the women in the shelters, a lot of us think that this is a class issue, or we think perhaps you can't leave because you have no money, you have no resources, and all of that. But in fact, it extends across class, and women such as your sister who were affluent, it's not strictly that. Can you tell us about the different types of women that are in these shelters, just so that we get a better understanding, that this just doesn't happen to one specific category?
Well, there's no socioeconomic boundaries.
Okay.
At all.
So
it doesn't matter if you're black or white, gay or lesbian, Democrat or Republican, I even say. I go to that extreme because, I mean, this should be a non-partisan issue, totally. But, I mean, they make it that, regardless. Wealthy, poor, it doesn't matter. You see all types of women in shelters. And, a lot of times they think that it's the homeless women, the women that are in the gutters, the 80% of the time, yes. They are homeless because they are victims of domestic violence running for their lives. And those are some of the statistics we have back in the States. I mean, they have nowhere to go. They have no one to turn to.
Well, here in Hamilton, the Hamilton Spectator recently reported that the calls in 2005 to the police, domestic violence calls were actually slightly higher in 2005 than 2004. And both the social services agencies and the police will tell you that domestic violence in Hamilton, that's the most common, the most common call. And yet,
isn't that interesting?
And yet, there doesn't seem to be, or I suppose you could weigh in on this. Are we paying this enough attention? Is there enough attention to this cause? And if
I think
not,
society wants to ignore it.
Why?
Because they think it's a family issue. They think it's, it's their problem. It's not our problem. But the fact that it is a society issue, it is a community issue. It doesn't just happen to a man and a woman. It affects the children in the home. It affects your parents. It affects your sisters. It affects your friends. It affects everybody. It's a societal problem.
How has it affected you? How obviously this has taken
my sister was murdered.
Yeah, a terrible toll. But yet you've decided to rather than just leave that go and
Actually,
heal.
that kind of just happened.
Tell me.
I mean, that just kind of fell into my lap. I mean, the first thing that I said, or the only thing that I said, because we were sequestered, or we were, gagged. We had a gag order during that whole time. And the one thing that I did say is that, well, if Simpson's so innocent, why is he trying to suppress all the evidence? Well, those words just kind of boom into all of this. And from there on, I was asked to, learn about domestic violence, talk about domestic violence. The organizations called from all over the world, and I started speaking.
Is it therapeutic? Does it help you heal, or does it keep picking?
It was an education. Yeah. It was a great education for me. I mean, I think it helped me in the grieving process of realizing, okay, well, there's nothing I can do to bring my sister back, but yet I can learn from these other women and these children that are affected by domestic violence on hopefully there won't be another murder. I mean, that's my ultimate goal. No more murders due to domestic violence, or no more murders, period. I just thought that, 12 years ago when my sister was murdered, since that was such a public thing and such a big thing and such a worldwide episode, that, people would really take this seriously. But still today in the States, 3 women die every day due to domestic violence from someone they're supposed to trust, someone they're supposed to be able to count on, and it hasn't stopped. Were what happened to your sister to happen now, do you feel things would have turned out differently? Has there been enough event? Well, there was laws passed. I mean, there was many laws that were passed
since
my sister's murder. I mean, people ran to legislators. I mean, as soon as that happened, they were running to Washington, D.C. They were running to their state capitals trying to get these laws passed and changed.
Tougher punishment laws, or more protecting?
Well, tougher punishment, protecting the victims. I mean, the criminals have all the rights in the world here, in our justice system. Why that is, I still am dumbfounded. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know why they are so, they treat criminals with kid gloves. And, somebody explained it to me once. They said, well, because no judge wants to have their ruling overruled and go to an appeal. And I thought, so they will let a criminal go because they don't want to go to an appeal? Or to spoil their record that they had an appeal? I just sit there and I just go, what is wrong with this picture? It doesn't make any sense to me, because a criminal, just because it is your wife or your sister or your, somebody that you are related to, because it's that, it's not treated as an assault. It's treated as, it's a family issue.
And is that left over from the days, of course, when women didn't
have the rights?
Yeah. Is that the hangover of that?
Well, I think we've gone far. Okay. We have. There's laws. I mean, we have gone. I can't go backwards. I want to go forward. I don't want to sit there and think, okay, everything is awful and everything is horrible, because there are good things that have come out of it.
Would the trial have turned out differently, do you think, were it today?
Oh, I think so. I think that if, I think with all the backlash on Gil Garcetti, our DA, the attorneys that wanted to take the case, I think they would have been able to. Vincent Bugliosi, he wanted to take on our trial. I think things would have been totally different. Yeah. And if we would have been educated, and our society and our communities would have been educated on the issues, I think it would have been different as well. And if they wouldn't care about their cities being burned down, and if it wouldn't have been about politics, I think it would have been different too.
What can we do now? What are you hoping? I know that you're creating awareness. I know that you're tonight, for example, is a fundraising at Interval House, which is one of 4 shelters that we have here in Hamilton. What are you trying to do? What would it take to stop domestic violence in your mind?
Oh, good question. People realizing that they don't need to control somebody, that they can live in harmony by respecting somebody.
That's interesting. So you're getting inside the man's head.
Well,
as opposed to just the punitive. Yeah, please.
I think you need to. I think that, 95% of the time, it's the men that are doing the beating, and they need help. And I think that what it takes good men to stand up and say, hey, you know what, domestic violence is not acceptable. And we need to work together. And I truly believe this because, I can go out there and I can speak until I'm blue in the face, but when I have a man standing next to me, if there's other men in the room, they just sit there and they just listen like this. I mean, I can be like this with somebody, but it helps. So we need good men to stand up and say, you know what, domestic violence is not acceptable. And I think if we all work together in trying to stop domestic violence, stop violence in general, I think we'll get a lot further if we all work together.
The men and the women, all the communities.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has to get involved because, it affects the workplace. If these corporations would realize how many millions of dollars they lose on a daily basis or on a yearly basis, depending on how large the company is, due to domestic violence, I think they'd think twice. I think they probably have a program there, and they'd actually be helping the women that are being affected due to domestic violence. I think they'd take a whole different outlook on it. But you know what? I don't care. As long as they recognize the fact that it's happening and they want to do something about it, I don't care if it's about $1. But let's just save lives.
Denise, thank you so much. I wish that we could talk much longer. I really want to thank you for coming by, and I really want to wish you luck with this. This is obviously a very, very important issue, and it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, and I thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
Hopefully a lot of people will be able to come out tonight.
This is Rebecca Field Jager from thespec.com. Thank you.